Hey everybody, welcome to the next Squat Success podcast episode. Really excited to have Rachel Jackson here today. So I got to know Rachel over the last few months after meeting her at an event and seeing her speak on a panel, and really resonated with what she was saying on that panel. And we've got a lot of similarities in what we think and how we run our practices. And I would just like to pass over to Rachel to share a little bit about herself and who she is and what they've done so far and how it relates to squat success.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for having me. It's a real privilege to be having a conversation. I think it's great for us to open up this conversation, because as we've had chats together at events and things, we've spoken about many things that kind of resonate. I think we need to have more thoughtful, open conversations like this. So I started my career in dentistry nearly 22 years ago now, and I started off as a receptionist in a dental practice, and then I slowly kind of worked my way through progressing through all the roles of dental nurse, management, business management, marketing manager, and now I have had my practice for 7 years. So it started off as a squat practice, and I went into the practice with an investor. So because I'm not a dentist, I struggled with the finance aspect of the business. So I did essentially a bit like a dragon's den situation where I went out to find myself this investor, and I had some conversations with dentists that wanted to go in with me, but they weren't the right fit for me. And so went into partnership with this investor who was nothing to do with dentistry and was essentially a silent partner. I really struggled initially because I think everybody needs to have a bit of naivety in business. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. And actually, Andy Acton said that to me, which is so true. And I really struggled with the aspect of the associate dentist because I know my place. And as much as I have the knowledge and the skills, I'm not going to overstep a clinician that has studied for X amount of years and tell them what to do. So I was in a situation where I couldn't upskill this dentist, and it really set me back. And obviously, my partner couldn't do anything. So I had to just really strip it back to what do I know, what am I good at, and kind of refocus on my patient journey. And Albert had worked with me in the past. In another practice, we worked together and I was his patient coordinator. And we just really got on really well. We resonated with how we managed the patient. He didn't like me from a managerial perspective because I made sure my boss was happy. So he kind of saw me as a bit of a bitch, which that kind of comes with the territory. And he was working in the practice as an associate, and he was doing the placement of dental implants for me. And we were having a discussion about a patient case. And I just said, listen, I'm a little bit stuck on this because I can see these things that you're talking about too, but I can't do anything about it. So we had a few kind of back and forth conversations, and Albert said, listen, I would be happy to come and help you out and work more with you. But obviously it needs to work for me as well. So I was like, great, okay, no problem. So at that point, probably a year later, Albert came into the business, but the other partner was still with us at this stage. And then I guess with our dental skill set, more kind of things were highlighted that actually this third person, it just wasn't working. And it started getting to a really difficult position where he was saying that he didn't need me in the business and he could do it without me. And I was like, okay. So I was feeling kind of pushed out of something that actually was mine, and I'd set it up and I'd done it. So Albert and I had agreed, okay, it's just you and me. And the other partner, we went through like an exit strategy, and he's no longer with us in the business. So now it's just Albert and I together, and the business has just gone from strength to strength. And I'm super lucky to have him with me, because he brings such a different skill set to me, and that's how it just works. And so all of the things that I can't do, like growing the clinical protocols and understanding the new materials and kind of leading that way, Albert does all of that and upskills our clinicians and develops all of the clinical side. And I do all of the team and the marketing and the social media and the business. And I work as a patient coordinator as well. So it just naturally works. And I do think I'm super lucky that he's been there from the start. And I think these things don't happen by chance, and maybe it was meant to be. But yeah, so we're kind of 7 years together now in the practice. And that's me.
That's incredible. Thank you, Rachel. I think off the back of that, I mean, there's a huge amount to dissect, but the first thing is being what made you want to go into practice ownership. Because for a lot of people at the moment, that would scare the life out of them.
Yes,
And
yeah.
ultimately, they wouldn't have the cojones to do it.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
completely,
You
yeah.
know, what was that thought process? How did that go down, and how did you do that? And also, it was fantastic that you got investment to do it because it means that you proved to somebody else that you could do it, and you managed to acquire the means to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Obviously, when I first started out in dentistry, it was just a job and I was having fun and I just cared about getting paid and going out with my friends at the weekend. And then when it started to really kind of take hold and shape into a career, which I did off my own back, I kind of left a small area that I was in and I thought, well, this is the type of dentistry I want to get into, the type of dentistry I've seen on 10 years younger. And I thought, well, to do that, I need to move to a bigger city than where I was. So I started to look at, okay, well, if I did an hour commute, then how would I get to this next stage? And that's what I did. So I was doing these ridiculous commutes just to develop my career and progress it. And I think that as I got into more of the management side of things, I really enjoyed it. And I have worked for some amazing dentists and some really good business owners and some not so great business owners. So I've managed to see lots of different things. And I think that a lot of people can relate when you say that you always think you can do it better yourself. So in one of my roles, I was just constantly dealing with complaints from staff and from patients all day long. That was pretty much what my job was. And I hated it. And I just thought, why is it so difficult? Why can't people see these things coming and deal with them before they get to this point, before they get to my desk where they're really angry? Why couldn't they just resolve it sooner? And I think that a lot of it is that dentists are really busy and they kind of have their head down and kind of shut their eyes a bit and think, oh, I'll rely on other people to do it, which is great if the person doing it is on the same page as you and truly cares about your business and respects you. But where that doesn't happen, there's a disconnect and then they end up letting you down. And then you're kind of going through like a worse situation. And ultimately, you're suffering all the time because your practice becomes a prison and it's not enjoyable. And I think that I'd go in anyway, always do the hours, always put the work in for every dentist I've ever worked for. And I used to kind of go in and think, you know, in my head, I'd treat it like it was my own practice. So I guess without realizing, I was kind of manifesting that. I was having a conversation with a friend and they said, oh, would you open your own practice if you could? And I was like, oh, yeah, tomorrow. And they said, well, why don't you then? And I was like, oh, it's such an investment financially. Like I'd struggle because I'm a manager and not a dentist and something. And they said, the money's actually easy, but the rest of it is difficult. And it's quite easy to get investment. People do it every single day and people set businesses up every single day. So it probably took me a year to kind of think, okay, well, let's start putting a business plan together. How does this look? How does this feel? And that's kind of how I started on that journey. But I don't think at any point I felt scared. I only ever felt excited. In all of that process, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. And I didn't feel nervous at any point. It just felt like everything was good. And I think I was definitely so naive in the sense that I was like, I've managed practices before. It's just the same. It's not the
So,
same.
yeah, in my opinion, I think that is absolutely incredible, without a doubt. That you've done, that you've achieved, you know, to do that and have the guts to do it, without a doubt, is brilliant. And from my opinion, you know, working with so many dentists, you know, for Squat Success, etc., I actually think the same thing as you is that actually dentists are probably not the best people to own practices because we spend so much time doing dentistry, which is an interesting concept. So it's actually the people around them, you know, our teams that make up and build our practices. It's not us. So there is a huge amount of scope for non-dental leaders within the industry to actually open and build successful practices. The biggest block for all of them is obviously finances. So ultimately, squats get open because dentists have the money and they can get the finance, etc. Whereas obviously for somebody who's on the other side, they don't have the means unless they do what you did and go and learn and get finance, etc. But it just goes to show the extent that if you're driven enough, that you can make it happen and you can go and get that. And you know, I say to everybody all the time, and it's the same in my practice. My practice would not survive without the team around me because ultimately, if I don't have bums on seats, I don't have a business. And everything that happens in the practice around me happens without me. It's what they do to bring the patients in. Then we do our bit, then we do the dentistry. But if you haven't got that first bit, there is no business, literally.
Yeah.
And you know, people neglect that actually the front of house, that is your biggest asset. That is the most important part of your business because without them you have nothing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, like I always say, that most dentists, you're not taught about business, are you? You're studying dentistry. They don't teach you how to run a business. They don't teach you about leadership. Like for me, I think I'm a great believer in like leadership starts at home. So how will you raise, like what kind of challenges have you faced in your life and what are the values that you were taught at home? And I also think being intentional in your personal life shows then how you lead your team and what that culture looks like as well. And those are the things that I don't think anyone's naturally born a leader, but I personally don't think you can train somebody to be a leader. I think they either are that way. And normally, in my experience, I see that it's like somebody that's been like an eldest child or somebody that's had some responsibility from a young age, or they've been taught responsibilities or had a job at a young age. They're the best people that I've ever worked with in a leadership role, and they have to enjoy it. Some people say, I don't ever want to be a manager. I absolutely hate it. And I totally understand that. Albert says it to me, I cannot stand management. I cannot deal with this. I don't want to do that. And that's why it works because I do it. But I'm a great believer in that's maybe why some dentists aren't right for leadership. But as you say, what a great position to be in when you've got that team around you where you can work collaboratively with them and you can rely on them so that you can do what you need to do and they do everything else.
Yeah, well, that's an absolute win-win scenario, without a
Yeah.
doubt. So, I 100% agree with that. Not everybody is as fortunate to be in your situation where you have a clinical dentist and yourself and split that role between you. Leadership is a really, really interesting subject. So, you know, I do a lot of research into this as I help and lead a lot of dentists and obviously within the practice. One of the things that I found is that you cannot go on a course and learn how to be a great leader. It does not
I
happen.
agree. Yeah.
Leadership comes from experience. It comes from an inner drive from within yourself to want to do better, be better, and also serve the people better that you look after. That's it. So, you know, when I look at it, if I look at it from a simplistic point of view, it is just the fact that I care so much about other people more than myself that I want them to be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
And I will
I
do whatever I can to accommodate that and make that happen. And that's a really simple view on it, but obviously there's loads of other stuff that goes into that. But like you said, not everybody is cut out for that without a doubt. And dentists are not taught this at university, and you're not taught it when it comes to business, and leadership and business skills. They are two completely different things. You can be an amazing leader and have terrible business skills, but still build a phenomenal business. A prime
Yeah.
example of that is Richard Branson. So if you've ever read his biography, he's dyslexic, doesn't have a clue about numbers or anything. But for him, it's just, I'm a leader and I'll just go and find the people that I need to that will do it for me.
Yeah, which is a great way to do things because I think that there's there's a risk, isn't there, of everybody wants to do everything themselves and they kind of go, oh, it's easier for me to do it and not delegate, but then all you're doing is burning yourself out. So you have to learn to kind of show up for people. And I always say, like, leadership isn't about superiority, it's about responsibility. Being a leader, you do have a responsibility to show up for others and show them how to do things and also trust them to do them and be available if they want to. So I always say it's
And
about,
I would add your
yeah, 100%,
point.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's brilliant. The other thing that I was going to add to that is when it comes to leadership, especially in dentistry, like I said, we're not taught that at university. We don't
Mhm.
have a clue until we get out in the real world,
Yeah,
and it's horrific. You know, ultimately, as associates, we're locked in a room. It's in a box. basically, 5 days a week. It's you and your nurse, and that's it. There is nothing around that, or unless you go out and educate yourself and learn and do whatever else, there is nothing. One of the things that I find brilliant about yourself is that number one, you weren't a dentist, and then the second thing is that dentistry historically, not so much going forwards, has been predominantly been led by men and males and male leaders. And I think it's something great to touch upon about how you found that process, and did you find it an issue or not? And how are you navigating that field?
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of conversation to open up as well, because there is this thing that I always refer to as like a gender war, but actually I don't see why that happens. I felt disrespect from men and women, actually. And I think that that comes from ego and outdated mindsets. And that's what I found. And I think that there's kind of the status thing, isn't there? And a lot of it comes from, or what title have you got, as opposed to, are you a male or a female? One of the things that I notice is that people are more than happy to be polite and respectful to Albert because he's got some letters after his name. But to me, I don't think it's because I'm a woman. I think it's because I don't have the same letters after my name. And actually, I think that that tells a lot about the person. And I think that with the kind of disrespect from men, I think it's about their own insecurities. And that's how I look at it. I think that there's been a rise in female leadership, and I think that's amazing. I'm in kind of a lot of groups with female leaders and women that have their own practices and they're kind of raising children. But my concern is that actually a lot of the disrespect comes from women pulling other women down. You don't hear a man say, "Oh, well, you're not at home with your baby. You should be at home with your baby. Otherwise, what's the point in having a baby?" That comes from other women. So the issue that you've got is these women are kind of,
That's a really interesting point that you've just said there, because my
completely agree.
because they feel often that scenario happens. I find that really interesting. I mean, I've never experienced it. I can't. I'm not a female, but
Yeah.
they have, and I find that fascinating. That that happens out there. And I think that's one aspect of obviously in surgery, in practice. But then I think when you go out in the wider profession, when you're doing bigger and better things, it becomes a whole nother level, and there's a whole
Mhm.
different thing at that level as well.
Yeah, I think it just goes on a scale. And I think that it's like all this female empowerment and everything is great and in certain circles I do see a lot of that and I think it's amazing. But the other thing is that you get these women are breaking glass ceilings, but they're also breaking each other on the way up. And that needs to stop. So the people that are being competitive and the people that are always saying things are other women. And I think that there's always this divide between men and women, and I'm like, why does everyone not just come together? It shouldn't be men do this, women do that. Everyone's free to do whatever they want to do, but I think if everyone comes together, then we would have a much better approach to things.
I agree completely. I mean, I put a post about this on LinkedIn and Instagram recently, seeing a lot of what's going on in the profession. I mentor and teach a lot of female dentists. Predominantly, the majority of the dentists on Squat Success at the moment are actually female, not male. And I think it's fantastic. I've got two daughters, got a wife, I've got a mom, I've got two sisters. Everybody's doing really well. And I love it. I want to see them all do the best, be the best that they can be. But however, I do feel that everybody has to collaborate more. And there shouldn't be a
Definitely.
separate divide between female and men. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be we have our group, you have your group,
Okay.
because that drives separation. In my head, I mean, I don't know what other people think, but if you've got another industry set up and it's just, oh, we're for women only,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing that because you feel that males haven't integrated you enough and
Mm-hmm.
you've been put down or whatever. But however, in my head, that then drives more segregation, because then the males are going to be like, actually, hang on, we're going to go do our own thing. We're going to, try and take over completely, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Whereas the conversation should be had in the middle. Actually, how do we bring it all together? How do we work together? And that's really important for a few different reasons. So, number one is for our patients, without a doubt. Number one, everything that we do in dentistry should be aimed at our patients and the care that we provide to them. Secondly, then is about how we work together in relationships with colleagues, and we have to bring it together because we've all got great knowledge, men, women, male, female, whatever it is, it should be combined. That's it, for a greater good, that not segregated.
No, I do think like true progress is collective, isn't it? And I do think that in my experience, and I've only ever worked for men, and I've never ever had an issue with a male employer that I've ever had. I've had issues where I've seen that their management style is something I don't agree with. And in my early days, yes, I picked up these kind of male traits of, well, this isn't right, and just I think that women do bring this kind of empathetic approach and a bit more understanding. But again, if you're a male dentist and you're a clinician, you've most likely got a female manager that does that anyway. But I just think that in my experience, I've never had a male that's told me that I can't do something or that said, oh, you're not capable of that. The only time that does happen, as I said at the beginning, is where it's a male with an outdated mindset, someone that I would class as a boomer that I'm thinking, well, we're in 2025, like let's move with the times now. And again, even in a lot of the conversations that I've had, maybe with like a sales rep, if they're of that generation, they are the ones that they kind of disregard me because they think she's just the manager and that's how they kind of view me, which actually that's fine. Like I'm not bothered about the title. I do everything with integrity, but I think that sometimes they forget that there's a human being that they're dealing with. But yeah, I do.
I find it fascinating actually because off the back of what you said, and think there's actually a few of the female dentists that I know who've said to me, openly and honestly, Bobby, we feel that you have a better handle on your team and a relationship with them because you're a male and they're female. Whereas we're females and we're leading a female team, and we find that harder for this, and this reason. Do you feel there is a truth behind that, or do you feel that is something that can be managed?
Do you know what I find is that for some reason, when there's a male and they say something, everyone's like, okay, yeah, he said it. When you're a female and you stand your ground, you're a monster or you're a bitch because you've stuck to your own
This is
values.
literally their sense. Yeah.
Yes. And I've dealt with situations with sometimes patients and sometimes team members where the way that I approach something to them is wrong. But actually, I'm not going to let my practice be a prison. I used to kind of really bend and be a bit more of a people pleaser and think, oh God, I need to be liked. But actually, it's my business at the end of the day. And if I don't stay true to myself and stay true to my standards and not drop them, then there isn't any point. So you have to get to the point where you just think, do you know what? I don't care if I get labeled as a bitch then. I don't care if that, you're always going to be the devil in somebody else's story, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I just got to this point where I was like, tough, like, I don't care. I am going to stick to these things that I believe in, this business that I created. I do it this way for this reason. And I just stopped people pleasing more and more because I don't think that you actually earn respect that way. I do say it's a bit like being a parent. I don't have children myself, but I do think that it's the similar thing of you're there to parent your child. You're not there particularly for them to like you at every single stage. Sometimes you have to kind of draw the line and they don't like you at that point, but do they understand you and respect you long term? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like that sometimes, even as a male, leading a female team, that they don't like what I say, no matter what. But it does feel that from the females in the group, it's been different when they're relating it to other females, which is really, really interesting. Really interesting. It's a topic that I want to learn more about and why that happens. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want to know, how do you get over that situation and make it better?
I
It's
think
as simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's just about opening up the conversation. So for me, I think in the past, I have approached things wrong because it's all I've ever known and all I've ever seen. So let's say that I've got somebody that's having an off day, I'd be like, oh my God, what's wrong with her? And I just ignore it. Whereas now I address it. So, but informally, I'll literally just say in the way to an open space where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's get a coffee, let's have a cat chat. And I'll just say, what's wrong? And then they'll tell me. And then they're seeing me as, and they still might not like me on a day where I tell them off. But interestingly, one of my team members said something quite insightful to me, and it really made me think of something in a different way. So she said to me, what you need to understand is you are like the mum of the practice. which I've never seen myself that way before. So she said, you know, when your mum tells you off and you're kind of tiptoeing around and you think, oh God, is she still annoyed with me? You go and knock on the door and you're like, oh, are you okay, mum? Like, do you want a drink or anything? Because you're trying to check, like, is she still annoyed with me? And actually, sometimes that's what it is that you get these when you're a teenager and you kind of had this conflict. I don't think boys have it as much, but teenage girls, anyone will tell you, are a nightmare. And I don't know if it's just that women with women thing of the mum's told me off, and it feels a bit more personal because it's the mum relationship. And when she said that to me, I thought, actually, I've never looked at it like that before. And I say it to the girls, and they're like, yeah, sometimes it does feel a bit like that. It's like, oh, my mum's told me off. And I actually used to think that the girls found Albert more, I wouldn't say scary is the right word, but would they be more concerned if Albert told them off or if I told them off? Because I think I'm a lot more relaxed, whereas he kind of picks at every little thing. And the girls said, definitely you. And I said, why is that? And they said, because when Albert tells us off, he's just moaning. It's just a dentist. He's just moaning at every single thing. And that's what dentists do. When you tell us off, we know that we've definitely done something wrong. So I think that actually sometimes people forget that as that woman in that leadership position, they kind of view you at that point. And that gave everything a really interesting new perspective for me. But actually, it made me really rethink how I do things. And I think I'm very open with the girls and I try to have these open conversations, but also they know where that line is. And that's really important that you keep the line and you don't blur the line. And we'll have a joke, you know, some like 5 minutes we're chatting and we're laughing, and then I turn back into boss mode, as they call me. And they're like, oh, suddenly like we're laughing and then you're the boss again. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because we've still got a job to do. So I think it's maybe that, and maybe that you're viewed in that way. And sometimes it's like if you're the dentist, you're the brother, maybe. So you're not as scary and they maybe see you as that different relationship, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that to some extent. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm more chilled out and relaxed. So they feel that it's easier to get away with whatever they want, etc. with myself, the practice manager, because she's female. However, there is an underlying tone that if Bobby does have to say something, that is it. It was like, wow. There's
Yeah,
also that
yeah,
aspect to it because it's, if somebody's so chilled out and relaxed and then they have to say something, it's like, whoa,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, what's happened now?
yes, yeah.
No, 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 that's fantastic, Rachel. Yeah, it's really, really interesting just to hear, different perspectives and, exactly from a female point of view because I can't touch upon that. Obviously as a male, I don't know what it's like. I don't understand it, but I see certain nuances, within the practice, within the female dynamic. So it's great. One of the things I want to touch upon was a little earlier on, you mentioned the word culture, which is massive. I love this word and I think it's huge and I think it's massively misunderstood within dental practices and dental business. I think more and more of it is coming through at the moment. But I would love to know more about what is your number one, what is your opinion of culture? What is your definition? What does it mean to you? And how have you tried to do that and implement it within your practice?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Again, like at the very beginning, culture probably wasn't high on my priority list, and that's where I was going very wrong. So I would bring people into my team based on what are their skills. But actually, the culture is the most important thing, and it's something that you learn along the way. Obviously, there's so many lessons along the way in business. And to me, culture is about kind of helping people, inspiring people, how you grow, how that shapes your business, how do they see you, and lifting each other up and showing them, like leading by example. So I always say to the girls, I would never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. But the reason I'm asking you to do it is because I need to do this, which at this moment in time is more important. But also, have they seen me do those things? Have they seen me go and check the bathroom after a patient? Have they seen me mop the doorstep? Yes. So I'm showing up for my team and I'm making sure that the values that I teach them, I am reinforcing those values every single day. And now when I hire team members, it's the first thing I look at. How is that person going to fit into my team? Because
That's a
that's
really interesting point when it comes to recruitment. So I'm huge on you're not coming through the doors, or if you do,
Mhm.
you leave them very, very quickly. But culture, from my opinion, is what we set in the practice. It is our way of life. It is
Yeah.
our family. So it's my
Mhm.
family away from home. And if you come into this, this is our family. This is the way we do things. We will look after you no matter what. I will.
Yeah.
But off the back end of that, you got to learn, this is what we do, how we do it, and you accept that. And if you've got that mentality, then brilliant. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's fantastic. And you don't have all the bitching, all the shit, all the bullshit that goes on behind the scenes when you've got
Mhm.
all those same people aligned with that culture.
You agree?
Yeah, it's amazing. We got practice with 5 females. We don't have a single argument, fight,
Right.
bitching, not whinging. They just love it. They get on with it. They're happy. But that is because it took me 2 years to learn
Mm.
how do you bring those right people in to what
Yeah,
you want to build in your culture.
totally agree. And I think that when you're in a small team, it's so much more noticeable. And I've learned that along the way. So the same as you say, it does take experience to learn it.
Oh yeah.
And what I've noticed is you get one bad seed and your whole practice rots to the core. And the whole team that you had that were really happy, they all start changing and you think, what's going wrong? And actually, the sooner that you learn to identify it, the quicker you need to get the bad apple out. And I've really learned to recruit slow and fire fast.
100%. I agree with that. The rotten apple, they kill the productivity of your other team members, without a doubt. And if you could put financials to that, which is difficult, I can imagine it will be significant, without a doubt.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There's a
I
lack
dread to
of
think.
productivity. But one question I did want to ask is when you do recruit now, and this will be really handy for everybody who's going to be setting up squats and recruiting, how do you start to nail that then at the front end? How do you
Okay.
determine who fits in with your
So
find that?
I've actually just finished a day of interviews back to back. So I guess for me now, I really kind of nail down the specifics of the job role. I think, and then I'll kind of shortlist my candidates and everything. And I think that the market's quite competitive, so I'll get people in quickly and I'll just do back to back 30-minute Zoom calls. I think you can just tell a lot from a person about an initial conversation with them. And the key thing that I'm looking at on that call is obviously the CV. Everyone's got a CV. A CV can, everyone can be great on paper, but actually, how are they interacting with me? Because that's how they're going to interact with my team. That's how they're going to interact with my patients. And now what I'll do is I bring them in. I'll bring them in and I'll introduce them to the team and I actually get feedback from my team. How did you think, what did you think of them? What did you feel? How was it? I'll then bring them in for 1 week trial. And after that week, we'll decide as a team, are they right or are they not right? And the thing is, even by doing all of those things, you can still get the wrong person. And the mask drops after like 6 weeks and you think, oh God, they're really showing their true colours now, which fine, they're not the right fit, they're still in their probation by. I think what I used to be really, really guilty of in the past is I would think, oh God, everyone needs these opportunities, everyone needs a chance. And I used to really just give it my all and kind of still believe in this person when actually I should have let them go. And that just comes with experience. And that was in my very early days where somebody wasn't right. And I used to just hold on to them. And then, yeah, spread the negativity. And you know, when they go, it's like this cloud's been lifted and everyone comes back to normal again
Yeah.
and you think, oh, it's not me. It isn't something in the practice, it's the person. But that comes with experience. And I think that the more in business, everything, isn't it? The more that you do it, the more that you understand it, the more that you can spot the signs, the more resilient you become, the easier it becomes to ride those waves. And I think until you do it, yeah.
Yeah, until you do it, you don't know. I just want to share my thoughts on what you said. Number one is fantastic. We do the same thing now. So we bring them in. It is a case of it's not just me deciding, the team will decide. So you come in, you have a trial, we see what you like. Even despite that, you might get it wrong, no matter what.
Mhm, mhm.
It happens. It's like I said, some people are very, very different and then they change, but you can't control that. Second thing I would add to that is there's a few things that you can do to start to filter those people out, actually. For example, it might sound silly, but you could actually ask one of them to come for an interview at 7 o'clock in the morning. What does that test? That now tests, number one, how does the person respond to this? Are they adaptable? Are they capable? Are they going to say, no, that's too early, I can't do this or that? Or is it, I'm going to make my life work around this because I want the job and I want to turn up?
Yeah.
If they do turn up, if they're going to turn up 7 o'clock in the morning, how do they turn up? Are they, dressed appropriately? Are they smart? Are they, looking after themselves? Or are they coming as a scruffy mess? Those few things will tell you a huge amount about their character and their personality. One of my first ever interviews as a dentist, my principal asked me to come for an interview at 6 o'clock in the morning before a rugby match that he was going to for his son. And yeah, and looking back in hindsight, that's all he was looking for. These are things that we don't think about or neglect. We just think, life's 9 to 5, but actually you can test people through various different means before they work for you. These just little things. But what you were saying was it does come through experience without a doubt. The first few times I had to fire people, with no experience, it was horrific. It was, weeks of like aggro, letting people be in your business, being rotten apples, and them having an impact on the other people in your business. And it was horrific. And when I look back now, it was, I wish I'd done it sooner, but I just didn't have the knowledge or the experience at that time. And the one thing I would say to everybody is you can't get that from day one. You just can't. As dentists, we're not used to it. It's not in our nature. We're just not programmed that way. But you can learn, but it learns through experience. It's like I say with a lot of things, you can't go on a course and learn it all. Some things you have to do through experience, and that's it. And then you learn and you become more resilient, more adaptable. And as long as you take it on board, you can grow your mindset and it will be fine.
Yeah, I think what's really nice actually that I see more and more in dentistry is that there's a lot of events which are quite inclusive because when I first started working in dentistry, that didn't exist. So I always say dentistry is quite a lonely world anyway, because as a clinician, you've got all of this responsibility on your shoulders and you've got this patient and every decision that you make, you're accountable for and you can't ask anybody else. And I think that now with all of these events and the nice side of Instagram is that people have these connections and actually they can have these discussions and there are these podcasts and courses and things where people open up to each other. So I do really like that because you do kind of get these insights and I'll have people that want a call with me and they'll ask me, should I set up a squat practice and should I do this and should I do that? And we obviously had a conversation earlier, which is what you say is that it's about the person and how resilient is that person and is it actually right for them? Because I think Instagram is such a highlight reel and it only shows the good bits and it only shows practice ownership as it is kind of glamorized on Instagram and it doesn't show the reality. And when somebody says, oh yeah, I just want to open a squat practice and I just want to do 2 days a week and I'll just dip in and out and I've got 3 kids, I don't think this is for you. And they kind of have to make that decision themselves, but it's just interesting of what they think that looks like. And I always say you need the courage to open a practice, but you then need the grit to make it successful.
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree with that. So, I mean, there's so many things to unravel there. I mean, the first one is Instagram, social media as a whole. Smoke and mirrors, absolute bullshit. That people do not share the shit. It's as simple as that. They don't. They don't share the bad. It's a highlight reel. They share the good. And the funny thing is, what I've learned in the last 12 to 18 months is that a lot of people are sharing the good, which is fake, which
Yeah.
isn't even good, just for persona and status and whatever else. And I've learned that through various means. But it's really interesting, to see the psychology behind it. Ultimately, people want to build their businesses, they want to be successful, they want to be well known. But there is a time and a place for everything. And my biggest thing to everybody is authenticity. In the short term, you want to do that. You want to be fake. You want to make out that you've done loads of stuff on social media, whatever, made loads of money and you're really successful. Number one is bad for other people in the profession. You're setting a bad example to younger dentists who want to set up practices, and it's not fair
Mhm.
because they will live and die by that because they don't know any different. And it's not fair, 100%. If you can openly, happily share your accounts on Instagram, uh, you know, then go for it. Happy days. You can prove it, you can evidence it. But if you're driving around in Ferraris and Porsches, and in reality, your accountants are saying it's no nonsense and it's no good, and you shouldn't be doing this, then you shouldn't be doing that. It's a bad, it's a bad thing for the younger generation that are watching it. Ultimately, the reality is that there is really, really good money to be made in dentistry, without a doubt. But it comes through hard work, sacrifice, and good quality patient care, and a huge amount of investment in what you want to do. And that can be either in business or it can be in education towards dentistry and clinical work. And that's it. But that journey is, a 5 to 20 year journey. It is not, I started today on Instagram and I was rich, next week and I had a Ferrari. It doesn't work like that.
No,
Yeah, yeah, it's a difficult one, because of the world that we live in at the moment, on social media. But there has to be people out there that balance that and actually share the real truth. And the real truth is it's fucking hard work, literally. Nothing
no.
comes easy. No matter what they say to you, nothing comes easy. You got to work for it. That's it.
Yeah, I think like Instagram's really difficult because when people have those really hard days, they don't share that side of things. They don't share that they've actually had a really shitty day. And you know what it's like, three things come at once. It's like a patient, a team member, and something else. And you just think, when am I going to get a break? And you have a sleepless night. And no one shares that side of things. Everyone's like all happy and posting. And then they start comparing themselves. And then they think, I'm not set out for this. I'm not good enough for this. And I see many posts within like different forums of people saying, I just want to quit my practice. I just want to sell my practice. I've had enough of it. And I think that they just allow everything to take over. And I see it with actual clinical work as well. More and more now, I'm seeing photoshopped before and afters. And again, it's just people are then comparing themselves and thinking like, I'm not good enough. And I think that
I can give you a really quick story on.
let's go.
There's a local practice who had an Instagram post that they did some composite bonding on a famous footballer. And I was on Instagram one day, about 6, 7 weeks later, and I saw the exact same post on another dentist, an associate dentist Instagram account. And I was like, hang on. So two people can't have done the same composite bonding on the same footballer in a different city, nowhere even near to where we live. And all of a sudden, alarm bells are ringing. And that's when it really hit me that actually there is a huge amount of fraud within the profession and dentistry for what we are called so-called professionals. Actually, it's nonsense because there is a huge amount of unethical behavior that goes on within the profession. Um, at the end of the day, I saw it. I actually found it really funny. It's hilarious because, from my point of view, I don't have to stoop to that level to be successful. I just know in my heart I've got to do the right thing, do the right work, look after the right people, and it will come. It doesn't matter. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be, next year, but in the long term, the grand scheme of things, I'm in the game for the next 30, 40 years. That's it, it will reap rewards. But when you see stuff like that, it really does make me literally.
Yeah, it has actually happened to us. So we had a reel that was quite successful of a very extreme before and after. I got somebody messaged me and said, oh, this dentist in another country has shared your reel. They'd kind of blurred out our brand on it. And then they were getting all these comments and they were saying, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. And people were like, incredible work. Oh, thank you. And I had to comment and say, this is not your work. Please take it down. And it just shocked me just how people just don't care. Like they so blatantly go on there and they're just like, take it. But I do think that the comparison thing is really difficult. And I think that's why it's good to have these communities where we do have these honest conversations. And it's kind of that you feel like somebody gets it and somebody's there and, I'm having a bad day. And like, I totally understand. I've been there myself and it does get better. And I try to do that myself a little bit in if a post really resonates with me and I think I have been there and I just send a DM to someone and be like, listen, it's okay, or this gets better, or give advice if I think that it's relevant to that person and they might need it at that time. Because I think sometimes it feels like you're alone and it feels hard and it feels like no one else is going through it. And actually, when you do speak to other people, you realise that everyone goes through the same shit. They just don't talk about it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, Rachel, we're coming up to the end of time now. And I think the follow-up session to actually talk about the squat because I think we talked about more stuff other than the actual
The
squat.
actual start.
Yeah. So I think there's a round two, without a doubt, which we can set up in a few weeks. But one thing I just want to end with is I always ask everybody, for people that are starting up, what is your three best tips right now in today's market that will help everybody who's thinking about practice ownership?
I think you really need to plan very carefully. Make sure that you get your numbers like as close as you can, and make sure that you've also estimated that you've got a cash flow when you first open, because I think a lot of people go in naively thinking they're going to have like 100 patients in their chair on day one. Marketing now is absolutely huge. So I think you have to go out and do the work. Like, I didn't just open my door and patients fell into my chair. I was months and months and months ahead, getting into the local community, having discussions, posting on social media, even though I wasn't open. And I think staying true to who you are, even if it means that you're not going to be liked, don't kind of compromise on your values and what you believe in, because I've seen so many things where people say, oh, I'm thinking of, not going to have my practice anymore because this person that worked for me tell me I should do it this way. It's not their business, it's your business. And always remember your why did you do it? And every time that something's hard, go back to that. And if it doesn't resonate, maybe it's time to stop, but hopefully you'll always remember your why, and it just keeps you going on those really hard days.
Yeah, no, those are all absolutely amazing points, Rachel. So,
Yeah, thank you
uh,
for having me. It's been a great conversation.
no, there's a huge amount of value that's come out of this conversation. And I really feel that we should do a follow-up. So, if everybody wants it, in a few weeks we can do a round two. And I think what would be good on that one is if we narrow in a lot more on the actual practice and
Yeah.
yeah, the growth and the clinical, maybe that kind of stuff. But no, 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 thank you very much. All right.
Yes.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Rachel.